Hello guys, today we're going to talk about a very interesting movie, The Twilight Zone, the movie, or Twilight Zone, the movie, or whatever. It was released in 1983. It's actually rated PG, but keep in mind, this was made before the PG-13 rating was invented, so PG then was kind of more like PG-13 now, kinda. It's an hour 41 minutes long. It has 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb with about 31,000-ish user votes and 44% on Metacritic with about 8 critics. It stars Alec Dan Aykroyd, who was in Blues Brothers and all that, and Vic Morrow, who was in The Bad News Bears. It was directed. The anthology itself was directed by 4 directors, each director doing a story and one of them doing a prologue. Joe Dante directed one of them. He was known for Gremlins. John Landis directed the prologue and one of the other segments, and he also he directed Blues Brothers. George Miller did a segment. He was known for the Mad Max movies, and then Steven Spielberg did a segment. Of course, we all know him from a bunch of stuff like E.T. On Rotten Tomatoes, the movie has 58% by critics with 38 critics, and 55% by audiences with about 32,000-ish user audiences. And the critics' consensus on Rotten Tomatoes is that The Twilight Zone, the movie, suffers from the typical anthology film highs and lows. Thankfully, the former outnumber the latter. The movie is available to stream on DirecTV, Stars through Amazon Prime, and Stars. And it's available to rent and buy on Amazon, YouTube, Google Play, iTunes, Fandango, Vudu, Microsoft Store, and DirecTV. And the DVD of it was released in 2007. Now, a little bit about this movie. So, Vic Morrow, one of the actors, he actually died on set. What happened was, Landis, he was directing his segment, and it was a scene. A scene's not in the film. It was cut out of the film. It had to do with a helicopter. His character is with 2 kids. The 2 kids were the two. They were two kids who I believe were. I'm gonna say Asian. I don't know the specific like where they were from, but I do know they were from like Asia, and from Asia or of Asian. I don't know the whole thing, the whole backstory, but because the location part of the story that took place was in Asia, and the kids them working there technically violated child labor laws, so that was a whole issue involved there. But it was late at night, and during a set, something happens, like an accident happened, and Vic Morrow and the 2 kids were killed in it. And it was a huge thing with the movie back then. It almost destroyed the whole movie, pretty much. And a lot of people did not like this movie for that reason. Even some of the people who finished and worked on it, like Steven Spielberg, had, like for him as an example, they wanted to get it done because they didn't want to work on it anymore. And the sad part was this movie was meant to be a send up on that TV show, the great TV show. And I think but the problem with the movie that but I'm gonna try to look at the movie without taking into what happened and as a movie as itself. But that in its end is a huge tragedy, and yeah, it was just a terrible, awful accident, and it was a court thing. I mean, no one was sent to prison because everyone agreed it was an accident, even though the people working on that segment did break a few rules, like the child labor law is one of them, but none of them really were to a point where it would have triggered the accident, but I don't know the details for sure. But yeah, anyway, the story itself, the opening prologue is amazing. I love the opening prologue. It's short, it's sweet, there's good build up. It's so good. I love it. Now the 4 stories. I mean, 3 of them are remakes of TV episodes, and one's original. The first segment is an original story. I actually like all 4 of them pretty well. A lot of people think the first one with Vic, the segment where with the Vic Morrow, a lot of people think that one's the weakest, and I think a lot of them pick that just because of what happened, the tragedy, and I don't, I don't think it's the worst story. A lot of people think Steven Spielberg's segment and Steven Spielberg's segment is a good one. Steven Spielberg is arguably the best one, but it's not really a horror one. It covers an episode of Twilight Zone that isn't really horror centered. Because not every Twilight Zone episode is centered around horror per se. But let's see. Then let's see. In Joe Dante, he remade the one with the plane. That one's good too. That one's very good. Um, then the one George Miller did with the kid that can with the with the kid with abilities. That one was pretty good, but it kind of ends a little weird. And I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I kind of can understand it, but I think they could have arrived to what they mean in a little bit smoother. But in all honesty, I think all of them are fine. I think my favorite, the Steven Spielberg one, was pretty good. I like that one a lot. The plane remake was good too. In all honesty, I think out of the four, I might say actually the George Miller one, and the George Miller one isn't bad. It's actually really good, but mostly because the way it ends is a little off kilter slightly. But all of them are pretty solid. But yeah, the plane one and the Steven Spielberg one, those two are kind of neck and neck. The Vic Morrow one, the only reason why it's not up there with those three is because I think because it's an original story, and I think they did a great job doing it, because that's a story that would fit in the Twilight Zone series for sure. But I don't know, that one's actually pretty good too in my opinion. Actually, I actually do like that one a lot. Actually, yeah, it's tough. It's tough for me to rank them. I mean, I think it's tough. They're all good, and the movie is narrated by Burgess Meredith, actually, instead of Rod Sterling, because Rod Sterling passed away like in the 70s, early 70s, or even 1970. I don't quite remember the year specifically, but yeah, but let's talk about the cinematography in film is great. Each director leaves their stamp on each segment. Um, Special effects are great. The camera work, everything's actually really solid. Dialogue, Dialogue's pretty good. There's not a whole lot of campy moments, really. There might be one or two there and there. The one that's probably the one that's probably, I don't know which one's the most campy, which one's the lightest one is Steven Spielberg one by far. And that's not really Steven Spielberg, it's just a story. Um, the darkest one, if it wasn't for the ending, probably the George Miller one. The plane one, not really. It'd probably be the Vic Morrow one's probably the darkest one. The campiest one, I think that might have to be the George Miller one by a hair. But I think the plane one is the most well balanced of the four, in all honesty. So they're all good in their own way. You can find other ways to it too. The movie does close with a Rod Sterling monologue, which I love, of course. So everything's really solid in this movie. There's not really any flaws per se. I mean, I think the problem with a lot of it is that I will say this: the remakes. I know out of the three remakes, I think the only one you could say might be actually be a bit better than the original. I think might be the Steven Spielberg one. I mean, the plain one, while pretty good. I don't know if it's as I don't know if it's better than the original, because I think the original had more. The remake is really in your face with it, while the original was kind of more subtle, subtle build up, kind of. I don't know. I don't think subtle's a good word for it. More of a tense build. This one does too, but it explodes quite a bit in different segments. It's kind of weird to describe. Um, and the kid one I think would have worked if it wasn't for the ending. The ending is a little out there. I don't really. I think if it kind of did a little bit more in one area, I think it could have worked. And if you watch the movie, you get what I mean. Like one area of the kid character and the other area of the kid character. I think if they mixed them a bit better, I think it would have worked. But I think they didn't do enough of that to justify it. But this is a PG movie. I think they were kind of like, okay, we can't just be complete dread. We need to have some lightness to it. And yeah, I think that could have been a case for it too. But yeah, I think overall it's a very solid movie. I definitely recommend watching, especially if you're a Twilight Zone fan. If you're not, if you haven't never seen the TV show, you think you should watch it before the movie? I think you should, because the movie is kind of a love letter to the original series, and I feel like you wouldn't get that vibe if you didn't get into the original series. As a horror anthology itself, how does it stand? I think it stands okay. I think because the 80s had a shit ton of horror anthology films. It's hard to say, because I feel like the biggest issue with this movie is that the stories they remake are good, but they aren't enough to surpass them. And I think a lot of the general hate was mainly toward the controversy behind the film, not so much the quality of the film itself, just what happened behind the scenes. And I think that's what really hurt the film in the long run for a lot of people. Now that time has passed, though, and people are kind of more like, okay, it was awful that happened. It's awful that happened, but we should be able to watch this movie and judge it for the work that's been done in it. And yeah, overall, it's a pretty good movie. I think you should be able to watch it and enjoy it. The tragedy behind it is incredibly unfortunate, and but still, the movie should be watched and looked at and appreciated, because a lot of people did work hard making it happen. I mean, every time a movie's made, it's a miracle. Every movie made's a miracle, no matter how bad it is, because making a movie is just so fucking hard. And I think it should be appreciated. Not only that, but it's a setup to the Twilight Zone, of all things. I mean, it's a tribute to the Twilight Zone. I mean, it should be watched for that, and I think it does a good job of that. I mean, in all honesty, the stories it could have. The problem is that the two of the stories they chose to remake are like one of the two of the best episodes in the Twilight Zone, and I think if they and the thing with the other one, the Steven Spielberg one that he remade, while it's a very good episode, I wouldn't say it's the best episode in the Twilight Zone. I think that's why it benefits, because it gave Spielberg room to kind of up it, and the other two there wasn't really any room to up it. And I think maybe if George or Don or Dante, if they if they picked a different one that was more good but lower tier, I think it would have benefited it in the long run. I would have kept the plain one. I think the kid one, I think I would have changed that. I think I would have done a different one. But that's me. But overall, it's a good movie. It executes a lot of areas. I do think as a horror anthology, I think it's middle of the road. It's not the best. It's not the worst. I think I think the one thing holding back from the other horror anthologies that the other horror anthologies, they had original stories, they were rated R, so they went full craze, and they just and still had the same talent and backing behind it. The Twilight Zone here, because I could go on forever about the Twilight Zone. We'll reserve that for another time, or talk to me in the comments or Discord or whatever. But it's a great movie. Check it out. And yeah, oh wait, in terms of DVD availability, I haven't really seen it around. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon or something, but I can't really say for sure. But you can find it, or get it rented, or buy it through online or whatever. It is gettable. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the videos, and have a good day.